question is, what kind of research did you need to do before you got to the point where you just sit down and write it?
This novel came out of a PhD inquiry, and David really had a great deal to do with that. Of course, it's a bit hard to kind of determine the difference between what you're researching for your PhD inquiry and the research that had to be done to make this novel in the version that it is now. It's a somewhat moulded into a somewhat different shape because it had to step away from the academic space that it was in. But I guess the first thing is understanding the place. So the first bit of research I think that I probably did for this book was walk the streets of Fremantle. And walking the streets of Fremantle was really quite different then as it is now, because some of the buildings that are in that book no longer exist. Some of these streets have changed completely. And that's really quite an interesting thing to come to terms with today. So understanding place to me is really, really quite an important part of where the story comes from. And figuring out how to locate the story in those streets. So I had a conversation with a woman who had been living homeless for a couple of years, and she gave me quite an insight into the gangland of homelessness, and that was interesting. I spent a bit of time talking to a wonderful politics professor who sadly is no longer with us, but he gave me a fantastic insight to the machinations of political parties and the skullduggery that kind of goes on within these power structures, and that was quite fascinating. And probably the other big thing in the research space there was the police, looking at police practices and police procedures. I had some conversations with criminologists, but I also spent a bit of time at the Metropolitan Museum, Metropolitan Police Service in the UK's website. Their training is mostly what our police service get here, and that was very, very useful. It's a little bit like going to the Old Bailey website and looking at old cases. It's that same kind of repository of information. When Carlo Callahan was police commissioner here, the West Australian website, police service website, used to have this list of acronyms that police officers use. It was fantastic. It's not there anymore, but it really was very useful, those little bits and pieces of information. So, those are some of the things